Hi, it's Sandra from SandraD Imagery, and I'm going to show you how you can add atmosphere to your photos or creative images using my atmospheric brushes. And in the brushes there's fog, clouds, light rays, dust particles. But what I'm going to show you is how you can create that moody look with Photoshop brushes. Let's dive in and have some fun. With this image, I'm going to create a mood with colour and then use my atmosphere brushes to add that mist or fog that just gives it that mystery look to it. Now what I'm going to do for the next layer is I'm going to apply a LUT or a lookup table, and I'll just turn that layer on and you can actually see that now it's changed the colour and the tone. And I've chosen Foggy Night for this one. Now to get a LUT or a lookup table, just go to your adjustments panel. Mine's just here for the teaching purpose, and then we'll come down and look for this button here, and it's a colour lookup, or known as a LUT. And then when you click on that, you then can choose the colour. And so let's come back to the layers panel. Now what I want to do is do some atmosphere or add atmosphere, and whenever I do the brush work I always do it on a blank layer, and there's reasons why I do that, and I'll explain that as we go along. I'm going to use my actions panel here, which is available in my shop, and it's the basic workflow actions panel. It speeds up my workflow. So what I'm going to do is click on new blank layer, and then I'm going to come over to my brush panel on the left hand side, and this is where I've got my atmosphere brushes. I've got fog, soft fog, smoke, which is great to give an illusion of smoke coming out of a chimney. Some dust particles, you could use that to add a little bit of a dust moody look in a forest. Same with the mist brush. Cloud dust gives a little bit more of what I call depth to a dust, and you can use that in a number of images. I've got just a normal cloud, a lightning brush, which is a fantastic brush to add a crack on a wall, or you could use it as a tree root on a tree. I have used that. I've got a wave brush and a water splash. The wave brush I use on some of my seascapes in the landscape days, where I just use this brush to give it a little bit more depth of a wave on top of the water. And I've got light burst, and then I've got a light ray. There's 12 brushes in this pack. But let's come back and go, I'm going to create a misty look, and the one that I'm going to use is soft fog. Now what I'll do is I'll check my opacity. It's 62%. I'm going to leave that at the moment so that you can see the effect. But if I was doing this in a normal workflow, I would dial that down maybe 10%, 15, 17. It's where you play and experiment. There's no formula for this. You don't want to be heavy-handed, but you also don't want to be too light. Now when you're using the brushes, what you're actually becoming is an artist, and you're painting in light or painting in atmosphere using these brushes. So let's come down here now, and I'm just going to do what I call a dab, and I just dab in some subtle fog coming on those windows. Now you can see it more as I brush on top of that ceiling. Now that doesn't work for me because it's a little bit too strong. So what I'm going to do is undo all of those dabs, the technical term I call it, and this is where I'll start to play with the opacity. So I'm going to come down to 23. Let's have a little look. This is where you become the artist. Where do you want to apply this fog or mist? Do you want it down at the bottom here? Do you want it at the end of the corridor or hallway? Let's just come up here and subtly dab around. And that's all I'm doing is dabbing that. Now let's turn that layer off and on. Now I think that's a little bit heavy-handed for what I have in mind. So what I'll do is come now and dial down the opacity on the layer. I'll just dial that down, right down, maybe 50, let's see. Might even have to go down a bit further. What I might do is try a blend mode. I might go lighten or screen. If I did soft light, let's choose soft light for an example. I'll turn that layer off, and it's very subtle. So I'm going to go back and go to screen. I'll turn that layer off and on, and you can just see where I've dabbed in that soft fog. What I do is I normally name my layer. For example, if I've put fog on here, I'll just double click in there and I'll type in the word fog so I know what I've done. Let's add another blank layer. I'll come to my actions panel, and now I might choose the cloud dust. I'll collapse that panel a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is just, let's have a look at the opacity is 100. So I'm going to leave it as 100 so you can see, and that's what the brush is, but that's definitely a bit too strong. So I'll come up here, I'll dial that down on the opacity to 25, maybe just on the 20. There's no formula, it's just experimenting. And I can just add that. Now that gives an illusion of light coming through the windows. If I put it there, no, that doesn't work, so I'll just undo. Then again I would name the layer, but let's add another layer and let's see what we can create. If I wanted to add a cloud, let's go in, that's my signature piece. There's a cloud up there. Now let's say I want that cloud there, but it's a little bit too big, or I could dial that down in opacity. Doing the brushwork on a blank layer allows me to do that. So I'll get my transform tool, I'll click on that actions panel, I'll make it a little bit smaller, and I can just put it there. This is a little bit of fun. Then I'll click on the tick. I then can also dial down the opacity of that layer if I don't want it too strong. Now I'm just adding atmosphere. I'm experimenting with the brushes to give you an idea of what you can do with these atmosphere brushes. Let's come back and add another blank layer, and what I want to do is put a crack in the wall. I'm going to go to my brush panel. I'm going to get the lightning brush. Now the lightning brush, as I mentioned before, you can use it to put a crack on the wall. You could use it for lightning in a sky. I've even used it for like tree roots off a tree. There's a number of ways that you can use this brush. So I'll click on the brush and I'll collapse the panel. I'm going to leave the opacity at 100% and I'm going to leave it white so you can actually see what it looks like. But I will make it bigger by just doing the bracket keys. One click and there's the crack in the wall. Now I'm going to undo that, and what I want to do is change the color. Now, do you do it black? Do you do it like in a blue tone? It's totally up to you, but my foreground's white. I'm going to change it to black. I'm going to leave it at 100% and I'll just do it one click and there's the crack in the wall. It's a little bit too contrasty, so this is where you can dial down the opacity on your layer. I might go right down, 17%. I could even apply a blend mode, multiply, soft light, because I don't want that crack to be dominant, but I just want to add a little bit more atmosphere to that wall by adding a crack. So I'll leave it at soft light. I'll come back to my actions panel. I'll change to the soft round brush, and let's turn these layers off and see what we started with and what we finished up with. So there's the original photo. The next layer I did a LUT or a lookup table. which gives it that moody tone. Then I started to build my atmosphere. I've done fog, I've done a little bit more dust particles, I've used a cloud brush, and I've used the crack. And there's another brush that we could use on this image. So I'll get a new blank layer, I'll come to my brush panel, and I'm going to scroll down and choose the light rays. Now I'll click on that, I'll collapse the panel, and you can see that's a different shape. Now what I want to do is just give some light shafts or beams coming out the window, but I don't want it too strong. So I come up, change my opacity, might do it around about 20, and then I'm going to do one click. Now this is where you position it, where you think, and now that's a little bit too subtle. Oh, hold on a minute, always check your color. I had it as black, so definitely undo, change it to white, and I'm going to leave it at white. You could choose a yellow or a blue, it just depends on the color of your image. So what I'll do is now come up and 22%, and I'll click, and there's some light rays coming through. Again, because it's on a blank layer, I'll get my transform tool. I can make it bigger so it comes down onto the ground. I can move it and position it. I can rotate it. That's why I wasn't too fussy about where I placed it. I'll click on the tick, but I find it's a little bit too strong, so I'll dial down the opacity on the layer, come right down, and I'll just make it subtle. Let's go and try a blend mode. Let's try lighten, screen. Let's go down to soft light. That could work, and then I'll just drop down the opacity. Now if I don't like where this is, it's a little too far down on the ground, again, let's go to transform. I can resize that, just bring it through. And why I'm doing this is to show you it is about experimenting and playing when you're adding in light and adding in atmosphere. Rotate that a little bit. Now what I'll do is I'll bump up the opacity, and that just gives that illusion of light coming through. Let's turn all these layers off again, and let's see what we've ended up with. A totally different image as I turn on each layer. Now I would build the atmosphere. If I was doing a composite image, I would do that more towards the end of my workflow, because you want to put your elements in, you want to blend them with your background. If you're using these brushes on a landscape, I would do my normal workflow, adding in levels or curves. If I was doing it with a seascape, same thing, get all my basics right, then I start building up that atmosphere. Playing with these atmosphere brushes just gives you a whole stack of tools to choose, play and create. Have fun with them.